Hey everybody, welcome back to Tim Travels. It's Terry, your host, coming to you from Kenosha, Wisconsin. Today is May 22nd. Interesting stuff happened on May 22nd. Sorry, there's like a crumb in my chair. Well, on this day, we think, on this day in the year of our Lord 337, Constantine the Great, the Roman Emperor, was on his deathbed. And it was on this day that he was baptized a Christian. Now, Constantine had practiced Christianity since he was a kid, but he was the first Roman emperor to be so, or not ordained, but so baptized. And that ushered in what would later be known as the Holy Roman Empire, and the idea that rulers, important big dudes, were Christians. Of course, later on we have, all sorts of stuff that goes on in the churches. The Great Schism, which is between Eastern Catholicism and Roman Catholicism. But Constantine's the guy that gets the ball rolling for like important people, professing to be Christians. So 337 AD or CE. So born on this day, few famous people: Laurence Olivier, the great actor, Ted Kaczynski, the great nut job, who really was played quite well by Will Ferrell. And then speaking of crime, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, author of Sherlock Holmes, was born on this day. And I say Conan, it looks like Conan, like Conan O'Brien's name, but I'm pretty sure it's not Conan, as in Conan the Barbarian. I think it's Conan, Arthur Conan Doyle. Anyway, he was born on this day. On this day, which actually was a Sunday, May 22nd, 2011, an EF5 tornado tears through Joplin, Missouri, killing like 160 people. It's probably the biggest town, biggest city that's been hit by a tornado of that magnitude. The first EF5 actually hit Greensburg, Kansas. And the big difference between Greensburg and, say, Joplin is Greensburg really has never recovered from it. They lost more than half their population. Joplin was a big enough town with enough kind of inertia, if you will, to bounce back and rebuild. And, I mean, I think I've been to Joplin. I don't live in Joplin, but I think people would probably say, hey, it's better than it was. The one thing I will say about that, and because I'm kind of a weather geek, part of the reason that the death toll was so high in Joplin was not because there were insufficient warnings. It wasn't like the Plainfield F5 tornado in 1990. There were tons and tons of warnings, tornado sirens, everything. But I've seen video, storm chaser video, where there's this big frickin' tornado barreling down the road, basically, and people are like standing in line to get ice cream and walking into Walmart, and a lot of people were killed in big box stores. And I'm sitting in the parking lot outside of a distribution center. Tornadoes in distribution centers, tornadoes probably like them, but distribution centers don't like tornadoes. They are not the building or the type like a big box store, Lowe's, Home Depot, Walmart, not the place to be in during a tornado. I don't know if you saw the video, but recently in, I can't remember if it was exactly where it was, Kansas or Oklahoma, not Dollar General, Dollar Tree distribution center was just ripped apart. And that wasn't even an F5 tornado, that was like F3. And it just ripped the place apart. And it didn't just rip the roof off. All those racks that you see going all the way up to the ceiling, like, what is that, 40 feet high, 60 feet high? That crap was everywhere. So I don't think anybody lost their life, but that was a miracle. You know, because crap's going to be flying everywhere, stuff's going to be falling down on you. So anyway, Joplin EF5. By the way, I said the Plainfield was an F5, the Joplin was an EF5. You may say, well, what's the difference, Terry? Or what does F5 mean? So F stands for Fujita, and that's a guy's name. Actually, his name was Ted Fujita. Tetsuya Theodore Fujita. He was born in Japan, educated in Japan, but he was a professor at the University of Chicago, and his specialty was meteorology. And so he's the guy that came up with the Fujita scale, and then they realized there were shortcomings in that, and they created what is called the enhanced, the EF scale, the enhanced Fujita scale. Ted Fujita died in 1998, but he's like a meteorological god, I guess, guru. But he was the first one to identify and, you know, kind of realize what microbursts were, and downward force from storms and stuff, which has caused some big commercial airliners to crash over the years. So anyway, enough about Ted Fujita. Joplin EF5 on this date in 2011. Okay, so a couple of people have asked me about this, and I've talked about it over, you know, in the past, but maybe it's in front of people a little bit more, and, you know, people are like, well, hey, what's the future of trucking? And I've had a couple of people say, oh, trucking's on its way out. I've had a couple other people ask about it, and in particular about AI and stuff like that. And I want to, you know, sometimes, and I guess this is what Occam's razor, right? Sometimes the answer is the simplest thing that's like right in front of us. And for those of you that are truckers, especially like over-the-road truckers, how many times, and I'm going to illustrate a gazillion different little things that truckers do on a daily basis that, candidly, I don't know if an autonomous truck can do. And here's why this is important. You know, a lot of people say, oh, well, you know, trucking, we could replace all these over-the-road truckers that are just driving across highways, you know, back and forth across the country. And while that is sort of true, it's also kind of Pollyannish too. Because what that does is it assumes that the trucker that's driving a load from, say, Northern California to New England, the only thing they have to do is get on a highway and follow a GPS, right? Well, that's not exactly the case, right? Because if there's only autonomous trucks, right, who, when that truck goes through Wyoming, is going to take their black book and walk inside the weigh station? And I know what you're saying. Oh, well, they could just do it by, you know, they could have a little tag on the truck and they could just know that your paperwork's in order. Well, they could, but they could do that now, right? Like, but they don't, right? The state of Wyoming, and see, this is where the argument starts to fall apart, because you could say, oh, I have an autonomous truck. All you got to do is give me a tag. Okay, well, who's making the tags, right? Who's going to bear the cost of that? The state of Wyoming doesn't have anything like that. I mean, we have we have like pre-passes and drive-wise, but we don't have anything that shows the papers. I mean, think about how long we've been in an electronic society. Email, you know, all sorts of messaging technology, and yet, like when I practiced law, I mean, many courts, like the federal courts, had already gone to electronic filing, but many courts in this country that, you know, have control over things that are important to people do not yet have electronic filing. And so the idea that, you know, or here's another example on that trip across Wyoming. The truck needs fuel. Now, I guess you could find somebody in California to fill up 2 1,000-gallon tanks that the truck's going to have on it, like a locomotive, and that's going to be enough fuel that they don't even have to pull into a fuel island to get fuel. Now, you may say, well, that they wouldn't put 1,000-gallon trucks or 1,000-gallon tanks on either side, because those would be a huge mess if the truck ever gets run into by, I don't know, like a car. And also, that's really adding a lot of weight, right? But we could just have people that are there to fuel the truck. Well, I haven't seen a truck stop yet that isn't self-serve. In other words, there are a lot of things that need to fall into place for autonomous trucks to take everybody's job. You know, there are going to be a number of distribution centers that are built or equipped to handle self-driving trucks, to get them actually to back into a dock and stuff. And maybe they even can get unloaded by automated means. But those are going to be few and far between. Because here's an example. I'm at Gordon Food Service. Is Gordon Food Service going to retrofit this entire facility? And if you've been to this one in Kenosha, it's big. It's probably the biggest Gordon Food Service I've ever been to. Are they going to retrofit this place just so somebody can get an autonomous truck in here? I don't know. But, you know, there's more to trucking than just trucks going down the road. Let me give you another example. There's a little sign, actually, I'll show it to you. There's a little sign over there. See it right there? It says Gordon on top, and then under it, it says receiving. Now, I can't see what's underneath the word receiving, but here's what I know, because I'm a truck driver. Now, I think you could train AI to know this, right? I know that there are phone numbers under there. And I know that as a truck driver, I'm supposed to call those numbers to let them know that I'm here and that I have a load for them. Here's the question, though. You know, if a truck pulls in here and there's a sign like that, what's the truck gonna do? Well, I would be, I mean, I guess with a telephoto lens, like if I had like Superman vision, I could see the numbers instead of having to walk over there like I did earlier. But you think about all the places, if you've been doing this any time at all, think about all the places you've been where you just have to figure out what's going on. Now, people say, oh, AI can be taught things, but there is so much that a human being does that, I mean, we put a man on the moon, and by the way, don't come at me, we did put a man on the moon, actually several of them, in 1969. That was a huge feat, huge scientific accomplishment. But look at where we are with AI right now. Like, if you don't spoon feed it, like you say, AI, write my resume. I mean, it can improve your resume, but it's already using a body of work that's there along with a computer program, right? But I don't know that irregular route truckload carriers are ever going to be able to get to the point where they can utilize autonomous trucks with reliability. I mean, think about this. How many times have you heard people say, hey, look, you know, we have GPS, use GPS, but you got to keep your head on a swivel. And you got to, you know, like, I can tell you with a high degree of certainty, there have been times, and I even have a GPS that's provided by my company. It's on the tablet here in the truck. I look at that thing, I'm like, I ain't going down that road, right? What is, you know, what is a truck gonna do that makes a wrong turn because GPS is wrong? And let's be honest, GPS is wrong a lot. A lot of the time, GPS is wrong. Even trucker GPSs, which people have pointed out are just based on Google. You know, trucker GPSs, you know, are not good enough to really navigate a truck by 100% of the time. The other thing, and beyond like the practical aspects of this, you know, if you look at Teslas have like the highest accident rate of any you know, brand of car. And that's based on per 100,000 miles driven. Tesla has the highest rate. And, you know, safety people and, you know, people that look at this stuff, insurance carriers, they've basically said the reason that Tesla has the highest accident rate per 100,000 miles driven is because of autopilot. People use autopilot. People have been killed using autopilot. And I'm not here to bash Tesla. I mean, you know, I just think the limits of our technology are demonstrated on a daily basis. You've heard of Cruise and Waymo. Cruise was this autonomous taxi cab that you could get for free in San Francisco. But all you got to do is Google Cruise, and it's spelled like Tom Cruise or cruise ship, and see that Cruise has done some pretty stupid things, and they should have been able to think about all this stuff. Like, Cruise has done shit like run over fire hoses and impede firefighters at actual building fires, right? Cruise hit somebody and dragged them down the street, and that finally got the state of California to cut them off. That's a little car, okay? That's a little car, and you know, there have been traffic jams because all the cruises just all of a sudden quit working. They just stop in the middle of the road. Think about how many times software on, like, I had a 2024 Peterbilt that is still on social media. The gal who got it has got some social media, like she's on Instagram. But anyway, you know, I think about how many times my cruise control quit working. My sensors, like, I couldn't sense speed of vehicles in front of me, right? Couldn't sense the distance, the speed, or the time between vehicles. How many times has the lane departure warning quit working, or is just totally screwed up and keeps telling you you're out of your lane when you're actually right where you're supposed to be? This is the technology, this is the latest and greatest technology that's available and on trucks. Now, there's a company called Aurora that is successfully running trucks between Houston and Dallas. And, you know, I think that there's probably there are probably certain things that autonomous trucks can do. But if you're a person that says, hey, I'd like to do a career change, I'd like to become a truck driver, and I don't necessarily need to do it for the rest of my life, but I'd like to at least know that for 20 years I'm going to have a job with a CDL. And my answer is, go right ahead. Trucking is going nowhere. Trucking is going nowhere because the idea that autonomous trucks are suddenly, and when I say suddenly, I would call suddenly like within 10 years from today, the idea that they're going to suddenly take over, you know, trucking is absurd. First of all, you would have to assume that every truck on the road, or, you know, and let's say, well, we can be more efficient because autonomous trucks don't need to take a 10-hour rest break, or they don't need a 34-hour reset. I'll give you that, right? They can run round the clock. But you can run trucks round the clock with teams anyway. But here's the other interesting thing. How much more, because I was looking at new truck prices on a website the other day, and it was a dealer website. So I know big companies like, probably like my company, even though we only have like 3 to 500 trucks, but Prime, you know, they kind of can make their own deals. But here's the thing. Making your own deal means, oh, instead of paying $215,000 for that new Peterbilt, we paid $185,000 because we ordered 50 of them. Okay, fine. But how much more is an autonomous truck going to cost? And then this also, like, nobody's really addressed this that I've heard, is what do you do? Who gets sued when an autonomous truck kills somebody? And they will. It will happen. Okay? You know, like when there was one car in the entire world, it probably took like 15 minutes for it to have an accident. That with one car, right? The traffic light was invented because when there were 2 cars, oh, damn, I had the right of way, right? There are customs and traditions, if you will, that drivers do that, you know, yeah, you could teach, what, you know, like I had a guy, here's a perfect example, right? I had a guy wave at me, and I thought he was telling me I could pull out in front of him because I was at a Love's down in Indiana, and there's like a side street where the Love's and the Pilot are, and it was all clogged up because of the traffic light. And this guy I thought was telling me I could pull out because he waved, but then he didn't. Like I was like, oh, okay, and I started to pull out, but of course I had traffic coming from the left. And then he moved. He was like, ah, I'm going. And, you know, I mean, nothing bad happened. There wasn't a wreck or anything. But there's so many things. Like, what do flashing lights mean? Some flashing lights at night mean you're clear to come over. Okay, I don't like it when people do that. I usually figure it out. But flashing lights mean you're clear to come over. Or flashing lights mean get the fuck out of my way. You're in my lane. Okay? 2 very different things, right? Can you imagine if somebody's coming along and flashes their lights in the back of a slow-moving autonomous truck that's in the left lane, and somebody taught the autonomous truck that flashing lights means you can move over into the right lane? That could be disastrous. Or vice versa, right? You just, and my point is, I know that AI can be taught lots of things, but guess who's not teaching AI? Probably not truck drivers. Because if somebody said, hey, you want to train this computer to take over your job and the profession of, you know, millions of hardworking Americans, I'd be like, yeah, sure, but you got to pay me like $1,000 an hour to work with you. I mean, if I'm gonna get a switch off the willow tree to whoop myself, I'm not gonna get a big one, you know. And so, I guess where I fall on this is, I'm not. Well, you know, I've already said I only want to drive about 5 more years, and I don't even know that it's going to be OTR anyway. But yeah, I mean, think about the limits of the technology that we have right now. The trucks that are running down in Texas that Aurora's all excited about, I mean, Aurora's trying to raise capital. They want investors. and more power to them, right? Bless their hearts. But here's the truth. Those trucks have been tested and tested and tested and tested. They run the exact same route every single time, okay? That's one trip. I haven't had the exact same back-to-back trip ever in trucking. In fact, I would say that even guys in the LTL world, a lot of guys run the same route every night. But you know what? There's still different things that have to happen. And, you know, there are so many legal implications, like who's responsible for doing pre-trips? Like, are you gonna hire a guy to pre-trip a truck and he's not gonna drive it? I mean, you could do that, but, you know, how good of a job is he gonna do? I mean, we already know that truck drivers don't always pre-trip their trucks well anyway. And, you know, so I just, you know, imagine an autonomous truck going to Walmart. What does Walmart make you do if you have an OTIF load? Well, they give you instructions, but I'll tell you what the instructions normally are. You check in at the guardhouse. The guardhouse gives you a gate assignment, or excuse me, a dock assignment. You drive to the dock, you back into the dock, you open up your doors. Who's gonna open the doors, by the way? I mean, I guess they could have automatic doors, but those cost more. And what if they break? I mean, what if one breaks in the open position? Now you got a truck that's useless, right? Okay, so we go there, we pull the seal off, right? Which is another task that I don't know if an autonomous truck can manage. We take our lock off, we open up the doors, we back into the door. Then what do? We crank the landing gear down, and I know you can do that automatically, but how many, have you ever seen any trucking company that has push button landing gear retraction and extension? I never have seen it, never, not once, right? And, you know, if you've ever had landing gear problems, you know, can you imagine adding like an electric motor to that whole scenario with a control circuit? Yeah. So we crank down the landing gear, we disconnect our airlines and our 7-pin, then we release the skid plate, you know, we release the kingpin, and then we pull out. Then we walk our documents into the office. All of that stuff could be done by someone other than the truck driver. But my question is, who? Do you think Walmart's gonna add to the payroll, or are you just gonna have a company that uses autonomous trucks? Hey, you work at this Walmart distribution center. If you see any of our trucks come in, here's what we need you to do. We need you to make sure we're complying with Walmart's rules. What's more likely, I think, is that a company like a Walmart might use autonomous trucks to deliver to their own stores, because those routes coming from their distribution centers would be standardized, and they could do, you know, there's probably a way they could do drop and hooks at their stores and have the truck just come back to its home base. But again, that is assuming an awful lot. And really, does anybody, who wants to take the risk for that? I mean, sure, Walmart takes risks already. So does every trucking company. But, you know, it comes to a whole new level when you know, if you hire a driver and that driver didn't, you know, passes a drug test, is in good health, and, you know, there's no indicia that the driver has ever done anything wrong, and then they kill a school bus full of kids, you got liability, but as the employer. But when you get a system in place that takes a human element out of it, so you don't have any judgment and you solely rely on a machine, What are you going to do when the autonomous truck kills a bus full of kids? And basically the government says, like they did with Cruise, you can't run any of your trucks. So you have 500 autonomous trucks. They all must be parked, and you may not use them until we give you the all clear. And it's gonna happen. Something's gonna go wrong, and somebody's entire fleet is gonna be parked, or whatever they have that's autonomous. There's a lot of positives to having human drivers. A lot of negatives, but a lot of positives too. So anyway, if you're thinking about coming into this industry, get with a company or go through a school that gives you good training. And let me say this, somebody was complaining about, they went to a trucking company and they wanted to do flatbed, and they said, but this company only does flatbed OTR. Well, my reaction to that is, okay, but you picked that company. Like, they were not happy that they were out on the road so long. But here's the thing, I have never heard, I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but I have never heard of LTL flatbed. I guess there's like local flatbed, like if you're working at Lowe's and driving the truck to deliver drywall. But I mean, to me, flatbed has always been irregular route over the road. And you can't fault the company for running their own program. If you sign up for their program, then you just got to deal with it. It's like somebody coming to Prime and complaining, or going to Prime, I should say. I talk like I'm still there. Like somebody that goes to Prime and then is like, oh, this 50,000 miles is ridiculous. Well, it might be, but you came here knowing that. You came here knowing what the program was. There's no shortage of information. So, but like I said, if you're coming into trucking, I think it's going to be fine. Unless you're like 20 years old and want to do this for the next 50 years. But I would say that even if autonomous trucks get widely adopted, and it happens way quicker than I think it will, in 20 years, there'll still be hundreds of thousands of truck driving jobs in America. That's just, you can bank on it. Write it down. Terry said this on the 22nd of May in 2024. You can take that to the bank. 20 years, there will still be hundreds of thousands of human beings driving trucks in America. Maybe there won't be 3 million, but I bet it'll be pretty close, because as the population grows, the need for trucks is going to grow. And this is not an industry that adopts technology really quickly either, despite what you may think. So anyway, I will be safe, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.